Welcome to You Can't Say That in Court, a podcast by Rise Women's Legal Center. I'm Vicky Law.
And I'm Stephanie Melnick. We are your hosts in this conversation about survivors of violence navigating the BC family law system. We recognize that this system is colonial and causes harm to families, and that disproportionately impacts Indigenous people.
By speaking more widely about these harms, we hope to raise awareness about the challenges that survivors face as they navigate the colonial family law system. This podcast is our attempt to collectively identify the barriers and ask for positive changes to be made. Thank you for joining us. Our podcast series will discuss difficult topics such as gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, including physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, and financial abuse. Please be aware that this is a thread that is woven throughout all the episodes, and we hope that you will take care of yourselves however you need.
Hello, Stephanie Melnick here. This is episode 14 and the final installment of our 5-part series about the intersections between family law and other related areas of law. As I've said previously, this panel discussion was originally recorded all in one go. If you've been listening to the past 4 episodes, you're going to appreciate that we tie everything up in this last episode of the series. And then just so there's no confusion, we originally recorded this panel in a video format. So at the end of this episode, you're going to hear a couple of us say something like, "We hope you appreciate the video," or for anyone watching this video, just ignore that. You know that you're listening to our audio version. Now, again, I'm going to start us off with some framing for the discussion, and then the 3 lawyers get into the strategies of how to create good support systems for clients. I think all of you listening will appreciate the practicality of this discussion, and hopefully it will give you some ideas for a legal situation that you're helping someone with or maybe going through yourself. Okay, let's get to the discussion about some practical strategies.
So with the discussion about some of the things that we can do, what family lawyers can do about the issues that we've been identifying throughout this discussion. One of the elements that came up earlier, Melissa, was we were talking about conflicting out, and that abusive parties may do this maliciously on purpose to call lawyers and tie them up or do a consultation so that they are in a conflict position for the survivor to not be able to hire them anymore. And you mentioned that there might be some policies or procedures you're using at your office to try and combat that. Are you able to expand on it at all?
Sure, yeah. So I had the luxury of practicing for a long time before opening my own law firm. And now we have several lawyers and staff. And so the staff, lawyers and support staff, must abide by policies that they sign, and then we have procedures to implement those policies. We have the standard policies about conflict of interest and so forth that's recommended by the Law Society. But I make sure that staff really understand those, not just read it and sign it, but that we walk through what that looks like, because it's very nuanced and it's very difficult in a small town to flesh it out. The basic procedure is that the staff are highly trained to not take too much information. So when a person calls, what's your name? Who's the other party? Is it a family matter? That's it. And as soon as they start talking, we stop them. And that can feel rude and unnatural because we're people pleasers, but that's what they must do. Even if it's abrupt, you stop them from giving more information. And it's tricky because in rural communities, I am stopped at the pool, I am stopped at the grocery store, I am stopped at dinners and given information I don't want from people about something. So as lawyers too, it's stopping those conversations before they happen. It can't get to a conversation. So it's understanding the ways that people can try and take advantage of your practice, but having policies and procedures that prevent against that, and making sure staff understand them and have the confidence to implement them, because it can be quite awkward. So we have an office where people will just walk in because we're a small town. That person might walk in and start offering information, and I can hear the staff downstairs saying, "No, we can't hear about," they'll jokingly, we've got lines like, "Oh, don't tell me anything because I'm just the receptionist or something." So it's giving them tools and confidence to prevent that from occurring. And that has worked well for us. Other things I think for myself or as lawyers that we can do would be, I had to really educate myself about violence, because I kept approaching it from traditional forms of violence that we see in the criminal system. But then when the Family Law Act brought in a more nuanced definition, I realized that I didn't always understand it. And how am I going to argue it effectively if I don't? So going out of our way to ensure that we understand forms of violence, whether they're psychological or financial, and then having the ability to ask the right questions, because I understand now that information won't be offered. Often the complainant, they don't understand it. So when they present to me as maybe shy or reserved or depressed, or it's trying to get tactfully to understand, why aren't you working? Why can't you file your taxes? Why can't, like, having a good way to get that information, because one thing I really need to understand is the frequency, the severity, and the intensity of what's occurring to that person. And that tells a lot. If I can tell a court that he's followed her 12 times in the last 2 weeks, it's a lot different than maybe what she's told me that he followed me this morning. So, you know, and it takes time to do that. That's back to the issue about resources, but I've gotten better at asking the right questions and understanding that it's going to take me pulling it out of people sometimes. And then I think the last thing in a small town that I've had to do is understand what social services are available. The amount of times that we have one social service agency, and I have a great relationship with them, and I can call them and say, hey, we've got a lot of issues right now around not having people to provide supervised visits. And at one point they created the program based on that comment, and we were working out something together. Or I have people that might struggle with literacy or housing, and I can say, look, call so-and-so at this social service agency and they can sort you out. And that person will phone me back and I can help them out and they can help me. But is just reaching out to other agencies so that we're not duplicating efforts, but there might be places available that can support with housing or can support with filing tax returns or that sort of thing, and building relationships with those agencies. So there's a mystique about lawyers too, like everyone's afraid to talk to the lawyer, afraid of what they're going to say. And I think letting people understand what it's okay to talk about or what it's okay to share, and obviously your client has to be comfortable with this, but I think there's a lot of room for interagency work to be done if we have the time to do it.
Yeah, I think I really agree with what Melissa is sharing, especially trying to get information about violence from complainants, from survivors. The coercive and controlling behavior is a pattern, right? And sometimes for survivors to say, yeah, he just followed me this morning, may not be enough to prove that pattern. But if the support worker has been working with this client over a number of months, the support worker can be like, well, yes, he followed you this morning, but he also forwarded you last weekend and on this time and on this time, and he's following you when these things happen. It's a lot easier for the lawyer to pick up those highlights and have the pattern than for the client to regurgitate and be re-traumatized in sharing their experiences of violence. In my experience, it has always also been very helpful to work with the support worker, especially when the client has multiple issues of law to deal with. So if they've got a family law matter and a criminal law matter and an immigration law matter, I am not able to attend all those meetings with all these lawyers to make sure that we're all on the same piece, or that the client is able to understand the intersections of all these pieces. We said before, it's important to reach out to these lawyers and have conversations and discuss strategies. But that is not an ongoing, it should be an ongoing thing, but it's not a regular basis. Like the lawyer is definitely meeting with the client on more times than consulting with the other professions. So having an advocate there who understands all these aspects and can relay that back to either the client or to be like, oh, we had a meeting with a criminal lawyer last week and this was what they said. And here's a copy of their notes that, I took during the meeting. That can be very helpful and time saving.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think that having specific policies and procedures like for your own practice in place is so important. And Melissa, I really do appreciate like what you have described of educating and maintaining with your support staff, because certainly I've left jobs as a lawyer because the support staff simply was not following that ethical vision, that way to support clients. And I do a lot of my own conflict checking. I'm a sole practitioner. I generally work on my own. In my office, it's me and the dog. But she's not a very good admin person, I'm not going to lie. A small joke and a heavy topic. But I use people don't understand, I think, a lot of the time. And why would they understand, like, why it's important for us to conflict check, why it's so important, why our code of professional conduct, like we are a self-regulated profession, we are governed by a code that we must follow or we get in big trouble by the Law Society. I use it though as a bit of as an icebreaker and like a trust building exercise, especially when I'm doing like either duty counsel work or law line work where I've never spoken to the person before usually, so it's our first interaction. I have a lot of folks go, well, why is that important? Why do you need more than just my name? I have people say there is no opposing party. I go, and this is a family law matter? Yep. Is there another parent? Yeah, but they're not involved. So, well, I still do need their name. Right? If there's a guardianship application, I need the applicants, right? If it's granny or auntie or whoever. If there's a step parent involved, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a new partner of any kind, I do track all those names. And then I let people know, like, listen, like, once I confirm that there's no conflict here, I'm on your team forever. There is no way at any point in time, and I do a blanket, my conflict, I don't care what area of law it is that I may ever practice. If someone was an opposing party on a family law file or child protection, I will never represent them ever. I will never have anything to do with them. So I'm able to say, I'm on your team now forever. It's you and me. And in situations where legal aid intake has already screened and they've determined that there's an issue of family violence, unless I need specific details, I make it very clear to my clients, listen, I'm honored if you are willing to share with me and provide me with additional information that you think is important at this time. I am very open to hearing that. Please do not feel afraid that anything you tell me will be either too much or I'll consider inappropriate. That's not the case. However, we're in a situation where because we're doing initial proceedings, or because we've got something coming up and I know it's going to be an adjournment and more information is coming from the director, that I can say, I don't need more detail. From what I already know, I understand that you are a victim and survivor of family, intimate partner, family, domestic violence. And that's all I need to know right now. And you don't have to prove it to me, right? It's not that I don't want to know. It's not that I don't care. It's more that you don't need to prove it to me. As far as I'm concerned, you said it. It's true. That's all there is to it. And if you need additional supports, we will do our best to find them together. But from a standpoint of this is what you're living with, this is what you're dealing with. And yeah, that issue of re-traumatization is so real. It's so very real, especially if someone's already been flagged by legal aid as somebody who's dealing with family violence, because please don't feel that you need to tell your story to me again, because I know you've already told it to myriad people. And especially if legal aid's already involved, if the police are already involved, you're dealing with immigration concerns as well. You've already been to court on other matters. I know you've already told this story. So that's where I find myself at it. And because I think we can live, just to summarize, we can turn those administrative pieces into the icebreakers, to the trust builders, right? We're in this together, right? The Law Society says I have to do this, so it's you and me against, right? You and me against the world. Let's do this thing.
And I think while systems might try to be neutral, that's not our job. Like, our job is to tirelessly advocate for that person. And I tell them that. I say, I will do my best for you, but my instructions come from you. And so what I try to do now, because I'm not a counselor and I end up counseling often, is I try to hook them up with counseling, because I said, this is a long road. It's difficult. You're going to have to do multifaceted things that are uncomfortable, and you need a certain amount of strength for that. And I can help you so much, but that's not my skill set. And I have found that really helpful. I see the same women circling back, and I can see they have a renewed understanding about what's happened to them and what they need to say and do. And it can be quite helpful. So now I have a little list in my office of different free resources for counseling or pay resources that I try to suggest that they do that. And I tell them that I take counseling. So I'm not saying this is what you need to do because you have a problem. I'm saying this is what will help both of us to get through this, because it's a journey.
I thank you for saying that, Melissa. Yeah, I've got a really great therapist that I talk to on a very regular basis, because this work that we do, like we talk about re-traumatization of our clients, but vicarious trauma is real. And we all work in areas of the law where, yeah, part of me being able to say, listen, you don't have to retell your story right now, is to protect my clients, but it's also to protect me a bit, because certainly as a junior counsel with no boundaries, I was going, tell me everything, tell me whatever you're willing to share, and it oftentimes it leads to burnout, it leads to serious concerns amongst our colleagues, our legal profession, right? Addictions, alcohol consumption, mental health, these are anxiety, right? That recent report that came out, like it didn't quite say that 100% of lawyers deal with issues of anxiety and depression, but I'm kind of going, I've never met a lawyer who didn't have anxiety. Like it's part of, right? Why would we do this work if we weren't okay with a certain amount of anxiety? But that doesn't mean we need to wallow in it. So yeah, building that support system for our clients, like counseling, and we had mentioned amongst ourselves earlier the need for third-party supervisors, for like supervised access, for parenting time, for contact access. But if the provincial government could please take notice of the fact that so many parents are looking for these services, right? Folks are struggling, parents are struggling, issues of family violence are rife in a lot of situations, especially the ones that we all deal with, professionally speaking. However, just because parents aren't able to be parenting together, just because there is a situation between the adults, that doesn't necessarily mean that the children shouldn't be spending time with both of their parents. So if that was another support that was easier to come by, that would be fantastic. And outside of, say, the director, outside of MCFD, because certainly I've got families who they have MCFD involvement under a family service file, so not as serious as a child protection file, but there is MCFD social worker involvement, and that very much can feel like surveillance and policing, because they couldn't access supervised visits without something opened at the ministry, without some open file still. So I do think it's very, very, very important that we, were we to have additional access to that situation, to that service. But I see situations where advocates now are getting more and more prevalent. There are so many organizations now, especially on Vancouver Island, that provide legal advocates that additional amount of legal support. So yeah, I also keep a list, Melissa, of organizations that will, even if you're not dealing specifically with director, that will assess you for whether or not you would be provided with the support of an advocate, which again comes down to, if you don't have family support, if you don't have personal support, which so often happens once you've been isolated in an abusive relationship, then here's a support that's right. It's not a lawyer. It's not an intimidating lawyer. It's often somebody who's been doing the job for a good long while, and it's like a conversation with a friend or an auntie, or somebody in your life that you haven't had around for a while. And all of those things are so valuable.
I think too, for younger lawyers, you raised a really good point. This is really good work. It's really meaningful work, and it's really important work, but it's really hard work. It's hard to be a family law lawyer in provincial court. And judges know that. I've had judges say to me, I had a judge recently say, what you're doing is harder than what I'm doing, and I know what you're doing because I did what you did. And I think it's getting worse as families come under financial strain with the current position that we're in. So it took me a long time to admit that every 3 months or so, I need about a week off. And because I have kids and I have family and I have my own life. And that really helped me, because I kept thinking, I hate this job, I can't do it. But that's not this job, I don't hate it. There's lovely things to be done here. but you have to protect your own self, and you're valuable. The service you're providing, you're highly trained and it's very valuable. But take your time, whatever that looks like, to gather your own strength, and then you're more valuable.
Exactly. Having those, being able to see your own, know your own worth, have your boundaries, and then even just like it's math based. Like I use software on my computer that tells me how much work I do. And when I take more time off, I'm able to serve more clients. And it feels completely counterintuitive that no, I should be, work more, take less time off, serve more clients. And it's not the case. I serve more clients by taking more time off. And when I finally, it clicked in my head, my ability to practice, my ability to, do things like this, right? Do non-practice activities that are related to what I do as a lawyer. And yeah, certainly judges, but also friends and family going, oh, you do such a hard thing. And I used to say, well, it's not hard for me, it's hard for my clients. And now I'm able to say, you're right. You're right. It is hard. But guess what? I have a system in place and I have personal supports in place that mean that even though I can do this hard thing, it's not going to destroy me. It's going to mean that I can continue to do the hard thing because it is so valuable. It's so rewarding. And yeah, there's nothing better than when my child protection, family policing clients fire me. I love that. It's the best feeling in the world. And like when they thank me, I'm just like, come on. Like what did I do? I know what I did, but like you did this stuff. I did an administrative job. I am right. And now I'm off. We're done. But it's your family, it's your life. You're the expert of your own experience. So you know what? I'm glad for the part I had in it. I'm also really glad we're done. And when my clients say, I hope I never see you again in my life, I go, yeah, okay, that's perfect. If we do, I'll smile at you. Feel free to come over and say, hey, but otherwise, yeah, you want to pretend I never existed? That's perfectly fine because my job is done and that's the best feeling.
I can't echo enough the supports that are needed for lawyers that are like us that are doing this work. Again, also experienced many times where I was like, I just need to quit because I hate this. And it's not. We don't hate it. It's the system that puts the barriers on our clients, but also we're trying to fight those barriers as well. And what Stephanie, you've said, like therapists, yes, supports, yes. Also your lawyer friends who you can vent to, like the amount of times that I've called Stephanie and been this system really sucks and here are the reasons why it sucks, and we just been like, yep, it sucks. But also I think calling, senior lawyers who have the ability to be like, yeah, it really sucks and here's how I dealt with it. Not like a formal mentorship relationship, but I think within RISE we've had a lot of law students alumni who've come through who are doing family law who are now practicing lawyers, and they still come back and been like, I'm dealing with this problem, like what do you think? And I think those types of supports, how informal they may be, are really helpful. And let's face it, we've talked about the lack of legal resources in this area. We need lawyers to stay in doing this good work. We can't lose anymore. But yeah, burnout does happen and vicarious trauma does happen. And so we need to make sure to take care of ourselves as well.
And I think too, if you're new and just beginning, to not be afraid to do it, because it can be, I think, deeply rewarding to help people navigate that. And, I do a little bit of real estate now, and it's not nearly as rewarding as helping someone overcome what is likely the biggest challenge of their life,
Agreed.
From working with family lawyers, my observation has been that it is the most intellectually challenging area of law, especially in the context of what we've been talking about today with all the other intersections that can exist, because the problem solving required and the lack of a linear process in family law in particular means that the problem solving ability, and then like you've all been saying, the rewarding side of helping clients through the worst moments of their lives is it's a really great reason to go into it. I feel like we're drawing a bit to a natural close here. Was there anything else any of you wanted to share before we do sign off?
I find it very very valuable to have these experiences because I've known Vicky and I have known each other for a very long time now, but Stephanie and Melissa, we have not. Right, this is the first time we're getting to know each other, and I occasionally drive through Revelstoke, but do not generally stick around. So it's so nice to be able to connect with the like-minded lawyers and practitioners across the province, that because we're disconnected. There aren't a lot in the grand scheme. There aren't a lot of parents counsel, and those who do it oftentimes don't stick around they either stop practicing in this area or they stop practicing altogether. So knowing that there are people around the province to be able to call on and just say hey to, and to vent to, or even just to say, listen, I don't want to talk about work at all right now. I just want to talk with somebody who gets it. Right? Like, let's talk about something else. But anyway, I find this so incredibly valuable. I don't so it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here having this conversation. And I hope that anybody who watches this video gets that sense, because having other people who the lawyers to bounce ideas off of, it's so very, very valuable. And there's no real way to quantify it other than to have a phone call and just to go, hey, I'm having this situation. How would you respond to it? Right? Because we're all different. There's all sorts of different ways. And when you mentioned, Stephanie, the nonlinear process, it frustrates other lawyers. That's why lawyers don't practice in family policing, because they just can't handle the nonlinear process, and also the power dynamic. Right? The director has so much power before anything else happens, and that knowledge that there's not a traditional win-loss system in family policing. It's not a battle of equals and then may the greater party win. It's David and Goliath. It's going up against a giant and going listen, even when the director wins, nobody wins. The best thing we can do is not end up at a trial. The best thing we can do is work together, get you the supports and services you need, and create a plan. And here's to doing that into the future with our clients and our colleagues.
Yeah, well, I think all three of you have done a really great job of outlining just how messy it can get when multiple legal systems are being used, and then have provided some practical solutions to some of these problems. So I feel like there's a balance there. I like how we're ending on a bit of a connection theme. I hope that anyone watching the video does benefit by making connections in their communities or with other family lawyers who are like-minded. That's kind of a secondary goal of providing this recorded session. And just to the three of you, I appreciate all of your openness and your thoughtful reflections on these problems. I think it's going to help a lot of people, I hope, and we'll keep the discussion going. We're not done yet. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was Steph Hodgson, the sole practitioner of Hodgson Law, Melissa Klages, the managing lawyer of Arrow Law, and Vicky Law, the executive director of Rise Women's Legal Center. Our future episodes will take us back to the broader context of coercive control in family law matters, the challenges that survivors face navigating this system, and the reasons why you just can't say some things in court. And hopefully ways that we can fix that. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk soon. Everything that we have said today is not legal advice. If you or someone you know needs legal advice, please consult with a lawyer. We want to acknowledge that this podcast would not be possible without the generous contribution by Women and Gender Equality Canada, Femmes et Égalité des Genres Canada.